Thank you very much. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Okay, verse 7 to 9 you said, huh? Yeah,
Yeah.
he said, I'll be exalted beyond measure, torn in the flesh. Yeah, the one that I was looking for, he said that he said, I would rather glory in my infirmities than the power. There's another one in, I think it was 2 Corinthians chapter, the text, I was supposed to write it down, but I didn't write it down. But
Verse 10, therefore I
verse
take
10. So
pleasure
therefore
in
I
my...
take pleasure in infirmities, okay, in reproaches, in persecution, in distress. For when I am weak, yeah, thank you very much. That's it. For when I am weak, in other words, when I make myself weak, that's when I am strong. That is the biblical mantra on vulnerability. When you make yourself weak, you are opening yourself to be strong. So the Apostle Paul is leading for us. So when we look at the Bible, the biblical characters, they were not afraid. In fact, Job, in Job 3 and verse 11, Job said to the Lord, why did I not perish at birth? In other words, why didn't my mother kill me when I was born? Job chapter 3 verse 11. That's Job making himself vulnerable. And then the woman with the issue of blood, that woman, she risked public shame with a health condition to come and touch Jesus. That's vulnerability. But she wasn't afraid. She knew what she wanted from the Lord. Okay, so there's a lot more I could say on that, but I'm just trying to show you that we're not talking in abstract terms. Where the need for us to be vulnerable is rooted in Scripture. But what are some of the benefits of making ourselves vulnerable? Number one, deepening of relationships. Vulnerability fosters authenticity and connection. Sharing fears and struggles and hopes builds trust. Being open about your challenges can inspire others to share their own, creating a sense of shared humanity. As we share together, we recognize that we are in it together. That your struggle, while it's your struggle, but we are in our struggles together. So it deepens our relationship. And I've found that the more I make myself vulnerable to others, the better I get to know them. Vulnerability, another reason why we should make ourselves vulnerable, the need, it promotes emotional healing. Expressing vulnerability allows suppressed emotions to surface, enabling healing to take place. Acknowledging pain, your fears, your frustration pave the way for freedom. So the more locked up you are, the more closed up you are, the more shut down you are, the more emotional baggages you're carrying. And let me tell you, all of us have them. I don't care how much you love the Lord, you have them. All of us have our own dark secrets. Some of them, thank God, the grace of God has keeping them buried, but there is some that is still there. And that's why it's very important. Our own emotional healing is very important. Another advantage, or benefits rather, of being vulnerable, it encourages self-acceptance. It allows us to embrace our own imperfections and recognize that we don't always have to be okay. It's okay not to be okay. And that's why we have to allow people to sit in their pain and their discomfort and work it through. Too many times we are too quick to fix people's pain and fix people up and dress them up because we are uncomfortable in our own pain. The challenge one of the things I find is that if I have a problem with crying, if I have a problem with crying, When I see you cry, the first thing I'm gonna look for is the toilet is the tissue paper to help you to dry your tear. And the truth of the matter is, somebody's crying is not bad, but when the problem is how it makes me feel. They're crying, they release their valve, you know. The person who is crying don't have a problem. I mean, they're bawling down the place. Let them bawl. But I have a problem, so I'm telling them, don't cry. Because I am uncomfortable in my own pain. And I think what vulnerability does, it allows us to be comfortable in our own pain so that we can watch people be comfortable in theirs. Who tell you not crying is comfortable for somebody? When you go to a funeral, don't tell people don't cry. If you cannot take it, then you can leave and go. But let them cry. Let people express themselves. But you see, it comes back to me and what triggers me and makes me uncomfortable. So vulnerability allows me to accept myself and my own pain and imperfections. And then it allows me to accept others in their own struggle. If I am honest about myself and my struggles, then when I hear people confess their struggles, it will allow me to be more empathetic to them. Another advantage or reason or benefit rather of vulnerability, it is that it enhances resilience. It makes us stronger. Facing or admitting limitation allows us to grow through our challenges. Sharing our insecurities lead to valuable support and insights from others. And it allows personal growth. Every time you share your struggle, it opens you up to growth. And that's the next point I want to make. Making yourself vulnerable invites support and collaboration. Because when I admit my struggle, I'm allowing others to come alongside me and support me. It creates opportunity for mutual growth and shared solutions. Vulnerability fosters spiritual growth because it allows me to rely on God more. If I know that if I admit my limitation, I recognize I need help, I need grace, I need the strength of God. So it's not a bad thing in that sense. It allows me to build courage. Because it's an act of bravery to open yourself. Taking emotional risk is not easy, but it allows you to build courage. But it also, the next point I want to make, the more vulnerable you are, the more authentic and less hypocritical you will be. Because you see, when we stop pretending to have it all together, we live more authentically. And when I am vulnerable, it frees me from the burden of wearing masks and pretending to be who I am not. I want to repeat that. When I am vulnerable or make myself vulnerable, it frees me from the burden of wearing mask and pretending that I have it all together. No, we don't have to all have it all together. And sometimes, sadly, that's what happens. We always want to always have it together. Our time has gone tonight. So let me just say one more thing and then have a part 2 to that, maybe another time. Vulnerability strengthens empathy because when sharing our vulnerabilities allow others to see our humanity and relate to us. It helps us also to empathize with others as we become aware of their shared struggle. And sometimes I think we adults just forget that we were young too. We just forget the struggles we have. And let me tell you this, brethren, I recognize the key to loving people unconditionally is making myself vulnerable. So tonight, I want you to start practicing vulnerability in your life. Start small. Start small. Start being honest, you know. And it may mean sometimes it's uncomfortable for people to hear our honesty, because honesty is not always pleasant. It doesn't always sound palatable to the ear. Well, palatable to the taste bud, music to the ear. But honesty is one of the best things that you can have from somebody. I'd rather you tell me what you are really feeling, as unpleasant as it may be. And a lot of us, we don't like people to tell us the truth. We want them to tell us what we want to hear. And that's what people do. We tell each other what we know they want to hear, because we know they can't handle the truth. Well, brethren, you got to start somewhere, because you will never live an authentic spiritual life without being honest. So if you don't like to pray, I mean, of course, you know, I'm rather you say, Pastor, I don't like praying. I don't like praying. I just don't like it. Tell me that, but don't tell me you like praying and you don't come to prayer meeting. Tell me you don't like, be honest, Anyway, let me stop here, folks. I've given you enough for tonight. Let me stop here. But this is where these are sort of some of my reflections on vulnerability. Okay. Yeah, let me just open up 1 or 2 comments if you have any.
Pastor, I resonate with you. Good night. Happy Sabbath. Your message is true and on point. I will make reference to my recent experience not having a job. My first time in 20 plus years being a nurse. I've never been unemployed. And there are times when I got to church and, we're talking about this, that, and the other in life. And somebody would say, I heard it, you're not working. Or even if I say it in the conversation, because I wasn't afraid to say it. I realized when I say it, I cut the devil's ability to concoct these depressive zones that he puts me in for having that negative spell of a situation I'm going through. When I speak about it, the control that I realize I have no more in my circumstances, I now become vulnerable before God and ask him to do all that he can, work through me in any which way he wants to, because now I realize I'm not, I used to be so in charge of what is happening to me that I would lock God out and then ask him a question there and here and there, how do I do? Did I do good, or am I on the right path after I've made the decision myself? But in this particular situation, I would come to church, I would be living my life, just going day by day, just the same, but in more prayerfully, submitting myself to the Lord more wantingly. And it brought me to a place where I realized when I speak about it, I got more strength, more control over the situation rather than the other way. Because when I locked it in, it was winding me down a depressive path. And that in itself is where the devil would get his kink in, because he's not working on the negative parts of it. But I flipped the script on him and I praise God more. And I asked God more for more work, and I asked God to do more in me. And eventually it worked itself around 100%, so much so that God, having seen that I was totally liberal and totally vulnerable to him, gave the situation a big twist, gave me a big job, a bigger paying job, if you want to call it that. He gave me a job not only gave me a job, but lifted me out of London and gave me a job in Jersey General on a building which is on the 12th floor. in a job that I'm doing that is not necessarily harder than what I was doing in London, but pays better than when I was in London. And it gives me a better perspective. So I see God turn the whole thing as I let go and let him do more for me than if I rather than if I were in control, and it worked out for my good. And I'm grateful that I was able to do that, but only because I let go and weren't in control anymore, not trying to put the pieces together, but let God put the pieces together for me. And he did so wonderfully. So I resonate with it, and I'm trusting that this vulnerability will allow us to see that we can't all be right. We can't all have the pieces together. God is in charge, not us. He's still in charge, whether it's problem or it's victory. He leads, and we are following. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? You know, and if you have nothing to, that's all right, you know. But I wish that the church family can become an authentic community of sharing where people feel safe to share and not be judged by what they share. Yeah. Yes, I see Pastor Sanko's hand.
Yes, Pastor, this is authentic. I did not sleep. I stayed through the entire session. I listened intently, enjoyed, and in full agreement with what was shared. And I just want to lend my voice in support of this